So welcome to our BHG, Being Human Group, Coaches Masters Class Series. In this one today, we welcome Danny Lee from Gallup. We also have Liz, who is our Gallup representative sitting in Omaha. Danny is a Gallup Global Lead Consultant, and he's going to take us through how to use a team grid from a strategic point of view and be providing us insights from his experience and his client work. We always think that this type of series is very important for our coaches alumni. So we take the coaching development of the people that have been Gallup certified very seriously. So we hope that you are going to find this of value and insight. In terms of protocol, guys, it's the normal Zoom stuff that we all have come to know and enjoy, we hope. And that is, please do not shout out in terms of your questions. Use the chat button. Liz, myself, and Mahrit will be monitoring that and responding to that. Danny will also ask you to participate. And he has given us a challenge by choice, which is please ask as many questions as you can. He's promised that all the tough ones will be for him, and the rest of us will sit back and learn from that perspective. So on a fun night, guys, I hope you enjoy. We are going to, at the end, just sign off and tell you who's next that's coming up in our Masterclass series. And remember, this is a BHG commitment to alumni coaches development. Danny, it's my great pleasure then to hand over to you. And please appreciate if you can lead on the next section for us.
All right, thank you. Thank you and welcome everyone. Now, it's a genuine pleasure. As I travel and work in 20 different countries, I have actually had not the blessing yet to work a lot in Africa. Although one of my best summer was in South Africa, it was a long time ago, 20 years ago, and working in Port Elizabeth and got to get on a BAS bus. I don't know if they're still now, BAS bus, and kind of travel the South Coast all the way through Cape Town, and also got to get on this nomad bus to Namibia. It was one of the best I think if you look at my top 5, my third one is connectedness. And I think I had my first awareness, connectedness moment in South Africa. Kind of growing up in Asia in a tough kind of academic comparison environment, just understanding that, hey, it's not just me and the next door neighbor kid, it's actually me and the lion and the tree and these flowers and the air, and just having that connectedness moment with myself and the globe. So it's a very special place. And as you can see, I lead with connectedness, and it's a core of my being. And it's a genuine pleasure really to connect with brothers and sisters from the other side of the globe. Today, we're gonna talk about this topic called strengths-based team coaching. This is a big topic, you guys. It takes a long time. And if you remember from your courses, it was the last day portion. We spent hours on it. And there's a lot of things to think about. Given the airtime we have today, I have about 40 minutes of time. I will go in a bit of a fast pace. Unfortunately, less interaction in the initial time, but do use the chat function to make comments, insert questions, and at the end, I want to reserve time so we have some interaction and some Q&A time to go. So a little bit about today's content. Today's content is not about how to lead a strength-based team coaching session in itself. Think about the word maximizer. This is about how we can, based on what we already know, how we can maximize. So it's not a course about like how to play chess, but it will give some ideas about some specific new moves that you can apply in your chess game. Not about how to play basketball, but it will kind of give you some tips about how to improve your jump shot and how you pivot your ankle in that way. So with that, here's what we have for you today. The cadence, first of all, we'll explore just a little bit of background quickly, just strength-based coaching 101. Think about what does a good coaching session look like versus a great coaching session. And then think about some things. What's the process? How do we design a great team coaching session? Then we'll actually dive into some of the topics that you guys are interested in, the team grid and how we upskill our ability to utilize the team grid. And then we'll close with one specific tool, an activity that allows the team coaching to not just end with, oh, that was a feel-good session, but ending with some specific aiming and performance outcomes. Before we get started, I do want to differentiate the focus today is on coaching versus a strengths course. I do want to differentiate that it is focused on an intact team versus a group. So as we know, if we're going into an organization and inviting all the, let's say, middle managers, that's not an intact team. That's more of a group. If we go to a university and invite all of the junior incoming students or the incoming students or the junior level students, that would be a group. If we go to a church and lead a strength-based kind of session, that would be more of a group than an intact team. Today, our focus is an intact team. There is a manager, there is a leader, and there is a specific performance accountability that's expected from the team. So with that, here's some things that we know about strength-based team coaching. General, when we think about team coaching, a great team, this might be an image that resonates with you. There's teamwork, there's joy, there's celebration, there's winning, there's some positive performance. However, not all teams we coach may look like this. The reality is when we're going in and coaching a team, their situation might look something like this. Their morale is down, and our role as a coach is to re-energize their group and up their morale. Sometimes the situation they're in might look something like this, where there's some urgency. We need to cross the water. There's some crocodiles, and not everybody's going to be safe. We're going to lose some, but we can't wait. And there will be some losses, but there needs some alignment, and the group needs to take charge and take some action. Sometimes the team that we coach might look like this. Our pandemic situation might look like this, where we're just relying on each other. Nobody really has the answer, but we have to take some actions. Some teams that we get to coach will have some real conflict, tough conflicts within personalities and individuals. Some teams that we coach may actually look something like this, where it's like a well-oiled machine and they just need some fine tuning or optimizing, and the client might say, we're actually pretty good. We just need some slight alignment, and that's fine. Sometimes, coaching doesn't have to always be that heavy, serious thing. Sometimes the team may also just look for a quick strategy for making the next move. So with that, we can see that when we're coaching teams, there are many different issues and challenges that comes to place that we can help them solve and enable and optimize the team. So I'll take a quick pause. In your chat group, go ahead and just type in a number of these images. If you think about the team that you will be coaching, or you coached a lot, or the team that you are part of right now, which one resonates with you when you think about the majority of the team that you interact with? The blindfolded version, the locker room, the buffalo, or a mix of the two? Yeah. So either way, teams are very complex, and there's many different approaches, many different ways to help a team. And strengths is one way that we can accelerate that. As we know, just like eating a really healthy, good food has many health benefits, strength-based approach has many health benefits for the team too. From a more qualitative side, we know that when the team, when strength-based approaches are operationalized, it's part of their day-to-day, We can see less conflicts, practical collaborations, and higher team synergy and performance that we see. Um, but we also know this cold truth that just knowing the dominant talent of a team. So the team gets together, hey, this is your top five. Hey, you got activator, I got achiever, and all of that. Knowing in itself is not enough. We know that dominant talents, that presents potential. The dominant talents in itself, whatever is in people's top five, those are not automatically strengths. And depending on how they show up, they can be operationalized towards strengths. They can also be great evidence of the team's weaknesses. So just knowing in itself is not enough. And we have to, when we're leading team session, we got to take them beyond where we're not just lingering on here are all the great potentials you have, but intentionally build those toward the strength space so that when we leave the room, all of those dominant talents are not just staying within the weakness and barrier states. So just like one of my favorite movies, Christopher Nolan's Batman series, the great quote says, it's not who you are, but what you do that defines you. So helping the team not just stay on who they are, but convert them over what they can actually be doing. So when we think about a lot of the strengths team sessions and coaching sessions that I've been observing and being part of, there's always that comparison of, man, that was a good one. Man, that was a great one. It was not just good, but great. So here's a quick, kind of based on my experience, what I've learned, the good versus the great. The good ones sound kind of like this. The course evals and what people say was that, man, it was really interactive. It was fun, very informational. So it kind of has that left brain rational kind of feedback. And they say, man, I really got to learn a lot about my strengths, about my talent. But then there's the great ones. The great ones are more action oriented. We talk a lot about the performance and real challenges that the team has, not just the talent that they have. They tend to be more transformational, and it's not just the left brain rational, but more emotional. We hear certain comments like, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about doing A, B, and C. And see that momentum moving forward. So a good session kind of feels like a single event where the great session brings that sustainability, also gives that indicator of being invited back for more coaching and more follow-up interventions. The good sessions, we talk a lot about the 34 talent themes, but the great sessions, there is that singular focus on talking about that particular team. So going beyond what I call a theme party and really dive into the real issues of the team. And, you know, this is a conceptual slide, but it's not that Danny always, you know, play on this side. Actually, when I started off, I think it was more like 90% was over here and then rarely 10%. But gradually over time, it became more like 50-50. And then I still get, you know, team coaching sessions that kind of stay here with different constraints. But the focus is kind of how do I move? Where do I sit now? What does my kind of ratio look like now? And how do we convert more so my team coaching series becomes more towards higher percentage toward this side? So with that, what does that process look like? How do we design this great team coaching session? There's many different ways. Here's just one simple way to think about it. You know, from a very high level standpoint, there's the design process, obviously, and then there's the actual coaching. So what happens during the coaching session? And then there's the what happens next, what happens after the coaching session. Many times when we're thinking about the coaching, we actually, and I've done that plenty as well, is when the designing the coaching session, my intention is really on that, okay, what is the coaching session going to look like? How much time do I have? What are the activities? What are, the cool things I can do, the fun things I can engage in? But what I found was what the great sessions look like actually is when the focal point is not in the coaching session itself, but what's next. And the design activity is actually more anchored toward not the coaching session itself, but what needs to happen after I leave the room, what needs to happen like 3 weeks after, 4 weeks after, 4 months after, 5 months after, and what that picture might look like. When we have the focus on the what needs to happen next, then the design phase tends to become a little bit more look different. So the one example was when we're in the design phase, when we know the actual outcome that needs to happen at the next, what are the performance outcomes? What are the accountabilities or the post-coaching possible interventions that need to happen beyond that just one, group interaction that we had? What are the systems that we need to make it sustainable? What are the key measures that we can identify upfront? Now, when we think about these things upfront, then the design phase becomes very different than when we're just thinking about, hey, how do I spend that 4 hours or 8 hours or that offsite retreat with the executive team? So with that, when we think about the 4 then stages, how do we design it? This one, I'll go a little bit more quickly because it is aligning exactly with the contents that you've already learned and familiar with from the course itself. This is basically the 4 kind of chapters or 4 coaching conversations for teams. So we always start, there is a big kind of rush and urge to go to step 3, which is about the team grid. But one of the things that's quite important is never to try rush this first phase 1 and 2. And here's why. Because when we rush to the team grid before each individual feeling really good, secure, confident about their own talent themes that they have, then um, the discussion about the team grid, about us, becomes a discussion out of a lot of insecurity or what I'm missing, or even feeling a little bit insecure and ashamed that everybody has achiever, but I don't. Everybody has, a lot of people have strategic, but I don't. So I grew up in Korea, and in Korea, I was educated with this like ancient wisdom that goes something like this: 수신제가 치국 평천하. And what it basically means is, sushin means first cleanse yourself, and then the next is take care of your family, and then 치국 means take care of your country, and then 평천하, then world peace will come. So even like everything, that big thing like world peace, it starts from within. Even Socrates said, know thyself. And even the Art of War I haven't read the whole thing, to be honest, but the famous wisdom there is, know yourself and know your partners, or know your enemy. So kind of know yourself first, and then know your partners and your team members. And then we can have a better picture of the team itself. So I won't spend too much time on the conversation 1 and 2, not because it's not important, but just because in this space, we do have a lot of tools available in your digital kits. This is probably like phase 1 and 2 is something a lot of us are very familiar with and can do it quite well. The focus I'd like to spend a little bit today is the phase 3, the team grid. So as we all know, the team grid is a very powerful tool. Many of us are familiar with it, and many of us have seen it, used it before. One of the things I find is that one of the differentiators of a good team coaching conversation versus a great team coaching conversation is that the ability for the coach to use the team grid for a dialogue. So let's explore that a little bit. As you know, a team grid, this is the version I like doing with the team, where we use kind of like these circle stickers and have the team actually put together their own team grid together. They get to like actually claim as they each of them put together their own kind of team grid and kind of plot their talents. And also, even within the remote environment, there are some simple ways within the team, within even Zoom, where we can have people kind of plot their own talent themes remotely as well. So, you know, with that, there's many versions of the team grid. Now, here's a sample version that we can explore just together today. So this is a team of 8 people. John is the leader, John is the manager. And let's do some quick strength storming together. Without knowing anything about this team, what's your initial observation about this team? There's no right or wrong answer. And let's just engage our brains a little bit. So in your chat group, go ahead and we'll just take 60 seconds. Go ahead and chat group, just type in some initial observations that you see about this particular team. And then Margaret, if you can help me kind of reading out a couple of the comments, that would be great.
Sure. Ian says, great at their job, difficult to find new clients. They need time to think. Alvira says, high strategic thinking. Liz says, high sense of responsibility. Yeah, Tommy Z, same, lots of strategic thinking, low influencing talents. Yeah, we're seeing that. What else? What else, ladies and gentlemen? Yep. Some relator.
All right. Nice. Well, yeah. Thank you for sharing. So here's what I'd like to share is we'll just call it 8 tips. 8 tips of how to utilize a team grid at a higher level. Some of them, not all of these 8 tips will be like earth-shattering or new to you, but it does have it will have some good reminders as we approach the team grid. Because some of these reminders and tips we forget when we're actually using the team grid. But when we do exercise these practices, it will increase your ability to utilize the team grid with your clients with more precision and specificity. So the first tip number 1, and this tip, I'll show you a slide that you can take a picture, so don't worry too much about taking notes, is the first tip is start by highlighting the power of each individual's first. What that means is when we're looking at the team grids, it's very easy to be tempted about looking at the big patterns. Oh, we see a lot of stuff here. We see a lot of stuff. Oh, we don't see a lot of stuff here. A lot of thinking, a lot of executing, not so much influencing. But before we do that, here's one tip and differentiator is start by highlighting the power of each team member. What that means is examine horizontally, one by one, what kind of talents and individuals are within the team. A quick, easy thing we can start off with is reviewing John as the manager. Where is his dominance? Who are the people who have dominance within like executing? How is the team individually different? How are they quite similar? What are some unique? We don't have a lot of influencing, but we have John, we have James, who brings a lot of influencing presence within the team. So tip number 1 is we tend to always forget about this, just diving into big patterns. But always start by highlighting the power of each individual's first. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, very hard to execute, but very important to do so, is always start with the positive. What are the pockets of excellence? It's very easy to get tempted by, especially your clients. Your clients will get tempted to get, oh my gosh, we don't have not enough command, only one person have communication. It's very tempted to get distracted by the empty spots, but always start with a positive. Lead your clients, encourage your clients to start with what's the power of the team, what's the pocket of excellence. Tip number three is discussing one domain at a time. So what that means is, instead of saying, wow, there's a lot of executing, we have great power in executing, instead of doing that, within the domain, get more finite. Within the domain, what type of talent themes are within the execution? So for example, in execution, does the execution come from more high discipline, high deliberative, high focus and consistency, where things are more kind of stable, there's detail orientation, plan and structure? Or is it more high arranger, high activator? Is it a team that brings a lot of resilience in where they, and reliability in how they execute? Even when we're looking at strategic thinking, is it more futuristic and ideation, the creativity side? Or is it a group that's more intellection, learner input, so they're gathering facts and figures, making sense of it, and then within that, they're creating a lot of different alternatives and possibilities. So when we're reviewing the domain, kind of dissect in detail one domain at a time. The fourth tip, number four, is just like how a good coach will do. Ask versus telling. So bring powerful questions. When we look at the team grid, bring powerful questions for the team to discover. And later on, I'll explore, introduce some powerful questions that we can use with the team grid as well. Tip number five is discussing the team grid in the context of the performance goal of the team. Tip number five is also another thing that we tend to forget, that we're so happy about celebrating all the great things that are in here. We lose the context of it. So always having this conversation within the context of what's the performance goal, what's the performance challenge, what's important moving forward for this particular team. The reason why that's important is because at the end of the day, after we go, they're not people who will be just celebrating their talent theme. They need to get work done. They need to solve problems and tackle challenges and bring out that performance as a team. So in that context, it actually allows the team to resolve how do these talent themes show up? How can they be used towards the challenges and the performance for our team? Not all teams need those commands. Not all teams need those empathies and the woos and the disciplines and the deliberatives. It's important to understand that if it's empty, does it really matter in the context of our performance goal of the team? And many times it doesn't, because we can help the team outsource other talent themes to bring out that particular outcome. So tip number five, a really important differentiator. Tip number six is review the blind spots after discussing the positive, not before. I would even use the word review blind spots after exhausting the positives. So here's what a team conversation can look like. We get 15, 20%, we talk about what's great about the team, and then comes the but. And then 80%, the rest of the time, is spent on looking at what our blind spots are, what our weaknesses are, what we don't have. And at the end of the day, it doesn't give them, it's an intellectual conversation. It's fun, it's spicy, it's like watching a great, like, fun Korean soap drama. But at the end, it doesn't give ammo for the team to move forward. So discussing blind spots are important, but make sure we exhaust the positives first before we go to the blind spot. So even thinking about the flip ratio of 80%, really focusing on the power and the potential of the team, 20% on the blind spots and weaknesses. Tip number 7, another thing that can quickly just kind of pass by without us being aware of it is weakness can also come from the team's dominant. Oftentimes we say, oh man, a lot of responsibility, responsible team, very reliable team, that's a strength. And then we move on, oh man, but we need command. But many times, just like our own talent themes, a lot of times our weaknesses don't come from what's on the bottom because they rarely show up. A lot of times the weakness that really gets in the way of our performance is the ones that are on the top, the dominance. So the team grid is the same, where we can think about how does our responsibility show up? What is our blind spots? Are we having difficulty delegating? Are we having difficulty saying no? Are we just taking on too much work and sometimes taking on the responsibility and the work of other departments? How does our achiever show up and what are possible blind spots there? How does our relator show up? Do we have some issues of cliques or silos? How are we perceived from outside of our team? We might be a very strongly bonded team, but it might be hard for newcomers to join or onboarding or be seen as cliques from outside. So really examining the weakness, the possibility that they also come from the dominant talent themes. So tip number 8, just a really important reminder that the team grid in itself does not show what the team is good or bad at. This is really important, just like when we're looking at a talent theme of an individual when we're coaching them. We don't just look at them and put a stamp and say, oh, they're just because this person has strategic in top 5, it's strategic. It shows nothing about that. It only shows the presence of the potential. We can have a team with a bunch of, let's say, strategic. They all have their own ideas and options and alternatives and good ideas, but let's say the team cannot align or agree on. Then it just becomes a scattered team. So not assuming that just because they have it a lot is a good, just because they have it less doesn't mean it is a particular weakness. So with that, the 8 tips are here. This is being recorded, but if you want to kind of take out your phones and take a picture of it, feel free to do so. I want to zero in a little bit on tip number 4, which is ask versus tell. Here are some good coaching questions that you can utilize when we're using the team grid with your team and with your client team as well. So here's something, there will be more obviously, and you will have good coaching questions too. Here's some things that I've kind of listed here. A good question is not just talking about the themes in the team, but what is the performance aspiration we're trying to achieve as a team? What is the performance challenge? Another good question is, what do you want to be known for as a team? What's the impact that we want to leave as a team? What are our powers and strengths as a team? And this can also be explored even without looking at the team, because sometimes the team grid can bias the team where they're just counting boxes. But stepping away, what do we know about ourselves as a team? What's our strengths are as a team? What are the needs of our team to be productive and thrive? So for example, if we have a lot of relators, building trust is going to be really important for us to thrive, being able to be genuine, being able to be authentic, very important for us to thrive. If we lead with a lot of analyticals, then having objectivity, having data, having facts, having logics, going to be very important. If we have a lot of team members who lead with high self-assurance, then for us to thrive, we need a culture of asking people their opinions and their thoughts, not just telling them what to do. Thinking of these questions. Another one is, who has unique talents that can help our team? Oftentimes we talk a lot about what we have a lot, but what are the rare talents that the team has that can be a very good unique contribution to the team? And how do we productively disagree? How do we handle conflicts? Here's some more questions that we can explore as well. What dominant talent themes can help us achieve our goals faster? How can our dominant talent themes slow us down? Sometimes the ones that we have, just like our, let's say I lead with deliberative, it's in my top 10, and sometimes deliberative can slow me down. And talent themes in a team can slow us down as well, when maybe we need that urgent, quick decision to be made, but we're thinking and we're a lot of intellection and strategy and learning and context. But then we're slowing down the opportunity window, and the window closes. On a 5-point scale, what does the 5 look like for us? How do we build relationship? And also, how do we build relationship outside of our team? How do we make decisions? How do we productively disagree? And how do we celebrate? And of course, there are other coaching questions that we can explore, such as, what motivates our team? How do we best collaborate? How do we rebuild relationships within our team? And how do we stay aligned with one another, and how do we communicate? So one of the things that we think about as we come back to the team grid is really understanding what it is and what it's not. It is a very powerful coaching tool. It's very great for coaching. It's not a tool for making conclusions or stamps or prescriptions about the team. It helps the team to discover how talents show up in a daily operations, the people dynamics. It shows the presence of potentials, but does not tell what the team is good or bad at. It's not the presence of performance itself, and not to use it for judging teams. And also discussing the needs. Discussion needs to go beyond who we are, but what we do. So we need to go beyond the knowing of information. Just like one of my favorite quotes is, if more information was the answer, then we'll all be billionaires with perfect abs. So we want to make sure the team coaching conversation goes and to the 4th phase, which is about taking action. Sometimes we can end this conversation with just commitment cards. Like Star Wars, it can feel like, hey, we had a good conversation. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. We don't want the team conversations to end like that. We want to make sure the conversation ends with specific aiming and actions. And when we do that, one of the biggest mistakes that I've made for sure is running out of time for the 4th conversation. So always be very strategic to reserve the last 60 minutes, even like 90 minutes in this team conversations, to reserve time for aiming for action. For aiming for action, I'll just go quick on this one. The very powerful tool that we know many of us love and used it before is the best of us. It's just exploring these 4 quadrants as an individual. How do I contribute to the team? You get the best of me when, you get the worst of me when, you can count on me too, and this is what I need. One of the things that I can share today is, I'll just call it the best of us is great. It's a very powerful tool, but the best of us, what I'll call 2.0. So remember in the course we explored the strengths wheel. A lot of us love the strengths wheel, but then we put a circle in the middle of the strengths wheel and then put the goal and then see how the dominant talent themes can be used toward that goal. Similar to that, we can think about a team grid where we add the team performance goal. So we're actually adding a circle in the best of us, and then in the context of the goal, how do all of these come about? So if the goal is a product launch or new change management, crisis planning, sales optimization, or customer re-engagement, when we start putting the goal in place, what we start seeing in the best of us is not just my talent, but people adding on their knowledge and skills. So it gets really tactical. It gets very specific. This is what I will contribute. This is what I'll do. This is what how I can help. So it becomes a lot more action oriented. So I would actually recommend trying out this with your own team that you're part of. And this version, it doesn't look exactly like this, but in your digital kits, if you haven't visited it recently, do so, because there's a lot of upgrades in the tools. One of them is the best of us. So you get to use the traditional conventional best of us, but the new version with put the team goal in between. And doing the best of us is that tool is also already available in your digital kit. So with that, we'll take some questions. I know I've been going like really fast, and there was not a lot of actions here, but hopefully this was a good reminder and some practical tips that you got to learn. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my slides and then explore what are some questions that we've seen, comments we've seen in the chat group?
So Danny, no direct questions on other than people are agreeing and giving thumbs up. So the session is now open for questions, guys. So either put up your hand, put your question to a chat into the chat function, or shout out.
Yeah.
First
or you
come,
can just
first
go
serve.
ahead and unmute and raise your hand.
Exactly.
Hi, I've got a question. I find that the teams, the managers, the individuals all just want to jump to this team grid. And I know that the first two are so important. How do you almost emphasize that enough? I mean, I've spent quite a bit of time with teams, and I'm still saying we're actually not here. We haven't even fully appreciated who you are individually. Just some advice on how you caution them, because they really want to just jump to this grid and make those conclusions.
Yeah, I think I would say from my experience, it's the I would say the team members, when they come here, they actually want to explore themselves. But it's the HR that might be really pushing for, yeah, we got to get to the team grid, or it might be the manager. So it's probably, from my experience, what helped me is have that conversation ahead of time with HR and with the manager ahead of time. And also explore the possibility that we don't have to actually get to the team grid today. It can also be a follow-up session. Oftentimes when I share how the team grid conversation can go unproductive, people tend to understand that, because at the end, whether it's HR, whether it's the manager, what they want is they want change after we're gone. That's what they really want. And when we are able to anchor the conversation toward, yes, I can do a 45-minute quick, rah-rah thing and then get to the team grid. I can do that, but it won't actually get the results, the behavior changes that the team is really paying for, or the HR is paying for, the manager is investing in. So it's a good question. That's why I found it very helpful to think about the what next, what happens after the coaching session, and anchor everything based on that.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah.
So Danny, there's a question from Ian, which is nice. How do you handle power struggles between the top strengths of top managers, say strategic versus achiever? I've got this in my top 5, so I think it's unreasonable to think that that would conflict. But anyway, the one wants to develop long term at a short term cost. The other just wants day-to-day success. So great question, Danny. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah. Can you explain the question a little bit? Neither of them are in my top 10. So
Right.
what do you mean by the power struggle?
I can.
Right. Ian.
Yeah.
So I've got the client company that both they start a partnership. They started a company together. The one partner really wants to grow the company into multi-site, multi-nation company, very strong strategic thinker. The other one just wants to take enough money home to pay the bills and have a nice life. And so and because he's more achiever, he wants just a week after the week. I've had a great week. We did some great deals. I'm happy. And so it's causing a lot of frustration in their relationship. And because they equal in power, they're struggling to move the company forward.
Yeah. That's a great scenario and interesting question. Those things, I would actually address them on a more one-on-one basis, because this is not, sometimes we think that the talents can explain everything and it's kind of like the golden key to every solution. But this is a classic example where it's talent, but also there's other possible ego, business point of view, or business philosophy that comes into play. So in that particular situation, I would actually take it outside of the team coaching conversation and bring it in more as a separate. We can start with one-on-one, but it's basically different business philosophy and how they prioritize. Obviously, both of them are very important, and bringing them together to collaborate. That's how I would approach in that particular situation. So that's probably a difficult one to cover in a team session. That's why it's important to identify those in the building coaching strategy phase, because we don't want to get caught off guard by possible elephants in the room.
Danny, there's a question from Carla. She's asking, considering that execs do not have enough time, usually the session precedes a strategic session where there's not a lot of time. How much time do you spend on phase 1 and 2 in terms of hours? And would you rather suggest to spend time on phase 1 in a one-to-one session? This question comes up quite often, so I'll be interested in your insight.
Yeah, great question. So when we try to sell strengths, it becomes really hard. When we start with the needs and the outcome, so we identify what they're looking for, what their business needs are and their aspiration first, and then bring in strengths as a solution, we get higher success in sales. We'll just call it sales for now. And when I say success in sales, it also allows us to get a lot more real estate of time, versus that, the execs are too busy, we only got 1 hour. If it's about the assessment and just understanding what talents they have, then it becomes very narrow focused on, let's just spend 1 or 2 hours. But if it's about the actual broader kind of their strategic goal or their business needs, then it allows us to negotiate a lot more time. And I happen to be lucky to work for an organization that does that really well. And so this type of session, we typically do it as a day retreat. It's a kind of 8-hour offsite executive level day retreat. Even at the team level, many times it's a full day conversation that happens. So to make it really clear, obviously the answer is it depends, but to give a reference point, typically the conversation 1 and 2 would be the morning. And then conversation 3 and 4 would be part 2 in the afternoon. We can also split this out where part 1 is just getting people energized and feel good about their talents, and that's it. We don't go to the team grid. And then we get reinvited back as part 2 is, okay, we've had the celebration of our individual greatness. Now let's look at the team together.
Great insight. Good, guys. We've got a couple minutes left, so let's take one more question if we can. Anybody else like to ask a question? Whilst we wait for people to type or to get the courage to ask. Yes, Eileen, go for it.
So I've got a lovely team at the moment that just started working together very nicely around their strengths conversation, some of the things you spoke about. What they want to do now is they want to bring in some of their next level senior managers into the next team session. How does one best facilitate existing team that had started talking already and they want to bring more people in because they're starting to see the value of it? What would be your suggestion?
Yeah, nice question.
That's a great, well, number one, if that's happening, kudos on you. It means that you did a really good job. So it's always a good sign for it to be asked for more. I think it's great. It's great to this is first of all, it's an opportunity to keep this sustained where and one of the things people love talking about their strengths, and there's always new activities and questions that we can embed where people, even they attended the first session, they still benefit from that, that interaction and activity. So we can kind of mix up the activities, but still keep it relevant as the size grows. Obviously, we won't do an entirely different team session just because one new member joined. But we can help them start integrating. For that one member, there might be more intense one-on-one personal onboarding, but then afterwards, help them making sure that after the onboarding, they get to have even like a best of us. Just the team getting together and doing a best of us activity can be a great kind of team integration. We've also used this in not selection, but succession planning. So not hiring based on the talent themes, that's a big no-no, but understanding the talents that the new members are bringing, understanding the talents that were pre-existing, and then discussing ways that we can eliminate misunderstanding and have that, the norming, storming, that phase accelerate and minimize unnecessary conflicts.
Danny, unfortunately, we're going to have to park it here for now. But before I close and do next steps and all that good stuff, just a couple of things to everybody online. We have recorded the session, and so we will be sharing it with you. We can't share the slide pack per se, but the recording goes with you. You can have a look at that. In terms of post webinar support, if you have, and this always happens to me, is that you'll think about the 17 great questions you should have asked Danny tomorrow over your first cup of coffee in the morning. If you have those questions, please feel free to drop Machrit or myself those questions. We'll collate all the questions if there are more, and we'll get you some answers on that, because that usually is, it takes me a while to think through a little bit about what I've seen and the impact and the implications. So if you want to do that, then please feel free to engage us, remembering we're just a phone call or an email away. Danny, from our side, thank you very much. I mean, there was a great number of things that resonated with me. It was fantastic to refresh some of the things that I thought I knew, but get a different perspective. It was nice to learn some new things that I hadn't considered, and it was fantastic. And I think that I definitely want to take the challenge of going from good to great with respect to Jim Collins. I love that idea. I want to get much more intentional about spending more time in the great space. So Machrit and myself have seen some of that great stuff, and we go, wow, that was fantastic. How can we do more of that? And I think you've been very helpful in giving us some thoughts around that.